Right, so in this video what we're going to do is create another select query that's going to be implemented slightly different so that we can see how we can get all of this data here in this table. So let's have a look what that error says. Okay, it says here fatal error, uncaught error, call to undefined function show all users. Right, so where does this show all users come from? We didn't create it anywhere. So if we just copy that, and I'm going to use our search function, we can see that we've got a show all users inside of my index.php, specifically in our admin.php. And here I've got my form, which is this form over here, and underneath my form in my code I've got a table. So here I'm creating a table. I've got my header, which is ID, fname, lname, username, which is these ones over here. And then here I've got this PHP tag which goes echo show all users. And that is when we are calling this function that we now need to create next. So over here, I'm just going to reorganize my bits and pieces over here. I'm going to create this function over here, just underneath the other one. And we're going to just pass that in there. It doesn't need any parameters because I don't need to query a specific user. I want a list of all my users. So I don't need to pass in a parameter for this particular query. But we are going to follow this formula of these 3 steps. So over here I've got my DB variable, go to connections, and then I've got my SQL query where I've got select my ID, fname, lname, and my username from table underscore users, and that is my query. Now again, I could do this, okay, select everything from table users. However, that's not something I want to do for the same reasons that I had before, where I only want to request the data that I actually need in the end. So that is my 2 queries. Now I'm going to go and process my SQL query. So we're still going to go and create an STMT variable where we are going to prepare our SQL query. And the SQL query over here is this. Then, so this one over here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and execute this statement. So execute. But because I don't have any parameters, I don't need to pass in anything into my method over here. And the last thing that I want to do is that I still need to fetch all my results. So I'm going to go result. Okay, or results, whatever you want to do, equals $stmt fetch all, and that is me getting all my data back. So other than that, what I need to do is still the same process, and we're going to go output, and this is just my empty string. And I am in this instance going to return this variable output. Yes, like that, and go from there. So inside of here, I'm still going to do my if statement just like I did before. I need to count if there's any results back, which there should be because I've already logged in. Result, and if that is bigger or equal to 1, or the same thing is just if it's bigger than 0. Then we're going to pass this in here, and I'm just going to append my string that I want to get my data in. So I can just do a for each loop, and in my for each loop I'm just going to pass in my result, which is my array, and I'm going to want to iterate over them as the variable item. Okay, again, all these variables are made up. You can call them whatever you want. It's just logical for the explanation. So what we now want to do is we want to append any data that comes out of this array. So we want to go a tr tag for table row, and then we go td, and then we want to type in this item, square bracket, and pass in, the ID. Because the first thing we want to show is the ID of the user. Then what we want to do is we want to just close this tag, like that. and this is our first line of our string. So we can just copy this again. Just going to remove that table row because we haven't closed that yet. And then I'm just going to change this into fn. And I want another one of those for my last name. And I want another one of those for my username. And so these things here that I have in my square brackets are just my column names in my database, okay? So these things here don't necessarily match these, but they do match the column names that we have in my database. So if we actually go down to the database query, we can see here ID, if name, L name, U name, PW, which are the columns of my table. And that is what these ones here refer to. Now, after I've got my last bit of data, I want to close this table row. And then what happens is every time we loop over this array, this whole string is going to be appended to another string. So if I have one item, this is just going to run once. If I have 2 or 3 items, this loop is going to run 2 or 3 times respectively. So that's pretty much what I have. We want to have an else statement for our if, because we always want to give that feedback back to the user, and the statement is basically going to say no data in this database, which in this case it never will be any scenario where this actually will run, because we need to log in with the user to get there in the first place. So let's have a look. If we refresh this page, we have, oh, count, there we go. Here we have our data inside of our database, and we can see here ID1, ID2, and Jeffrey and Peter, and these are our details. And again, this data comes back from our database where we've just inserted these 2 pieces of data, okay? So this is our second and final select statement for this demonstration. And the next thing what we're going to check is how can we add data to the database. So we're going to basically increase the rows in this table, which in turn also allows us the user accounts that we need to be able to log into this system. So that's in the next video.